David, you're the host of Nothing Personal with David Samson. You cover all the big topics in sports and sports business. We'll get into Damar Hamlin in a little bit, but there was a breaking story yesterday that had all sorts of drama attached in U.S. soccer. Now there is a family beef between the Berhalters and the Reynas. Everybody was wondering why Gio Reyna wasn't playing during the World Cup. Apparently, Gregg Berhalter told him before the World Cup that he wasn't planning on using him all that much. A very weird tactic from Gregg Berhalter ahead of the World Cup with one of your more talented players to just come out and say, I'm not planning on using you. You don't really see that often. But then Claudio Reyna, Gio Reyna's father, I'm sorry for that, that's fine. Thank you, Roy, for getting me off track. Claudio Reyna, former U.S. captain, teammate of Gregg Berhalter's all throughout youth. He's known Gregg Berhalter for 30 years, and Claudio's wife apparently made it known to people in U.S. soccer that Gregg Berhalter had a domestic incident in his past, and where Gregg Berhalter allegedly kicked his now wife. They have a family. They've reconciled. They've worked through it. They have children and all that. This is now come into public light 30 years after. The Berhalters ended up feeling blackmailed. The Reynas have put out a statement on this saying that there was no blackmail intention, but I guess the Berhalters felt like there was. Gio Reyna still at the center of this, maybe being held responsible for the actions of his parents. Is a very ugly situation. And for me, it just reeks of a lack of leadership top to bottom and a bad culture at U.S. soccer for Claudio Reyna to feel like he is powerful enough to attempt this. Not just before the World Cup, at any time, just shows a really small-time operation, I feel. What was your take on the Reyna versus Berhalter scandal?
Well, I gave you 15 minutes on it just now for today's Nothing Personal, but I'm going to go to the end and tell you that Claudio should lose his job with Austin. That's number one. Number two, Gio should never play for U.S. men's national team again because of the action of his parents, because we have to make an example, because it's not about the organization or the federation. Anybody can whistleblow. Anyone can tattletale. Anyone can extort or blackmail. And that's not a reflection on the underlying institution. The real question is, how did this woman, the mother, who, by the way, like Mrs. Roger Clemens saying that the steroids were for her, she said, I called U.S. soccer. It wasn't Claudio. At first it was him, then it was them, then it was her. And her statement says, no, it was me. How did she not go to her best friend, who is the mother of Gio? They lived together in college. This happened in college. I don't know the definition, and we're not talking about the underlying incident. I don't know if with your girlfriend or with your friend, what happened. We don't know anything. It's never okay to do what Greg did, period. We say that. That said,
yeah, Berhalter
how does she
did
not go to her best friend?
Gregg Berhalter in a statement did admit that this incident happened.
He tried to get in front of it. It reminded me of when Jeff Bezos got in front of his affair, which was going to be leaked, saying, I'm not going to be extorted. I'm going to tell everybody I was having an affair and I'm getting divorced. No problem. Bill Gates did something similar. So I understand that we all feel the need to get ahead of stories now, but it doesn't change my anger over her running to mommy, which is USS in this case, and talking about this without going to her best friend first and saying, man, what your husband's doing to my son, we're all best friends. This is crushing me.
This is blackmail, in your opinion, correct?
No, because what's the blackmail is when you want to get something. Yeah. Extortion is right. What is trying to get more playing time for Gio?
No, I think by the time that it happened, the World Cup had ended. She was trying to get Gregg Berhalter fired.
So she didn't
or not renewed.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. So she's blackmailing who?
I think so. The assumption on the basis of the fact that they decided to put a statement about it and get ahead of this publicly was that there was going to be a public revelation of these facts, and that it was going to smear Gregg Berhalter's reputation to the point where U.S. Soccer would have no choice but to fire him.
And by the way, he's not coaching. When is it, Chris? This month?
Yeah,
His contract was up.
His contract was up, and he is still in the running to keep his job. But while he does not have a contract, they are running a camp at the end of this month and playing 2 international friendlies. And one of the assistants from the World Cup team is going to coach while they figure out who the permanent manager is going to be.
Who is under contract? The assistant, though, right?
I believe so. Yes, Anthony
That's
Hudson.
totally normal, right? If you have a player under contract, they're not allowed to play, or a coach is not allowed to coach without a contract. I do not find that strange at all. That if the reason he's not coaching is because of the pending investigation, that's a bunch of horse hockey.
Well, I mean, they might have gone in a different direction, and like they are currently looking for their full-time manager, and in a month, like they decided that they weren't going to do that process in a month, that they want to take their time with this.
Chris, this has gotten so ugly that there's just no way you can bring Gregg Berhalter back. That being said, U.S. Soccer will never cease to amaze me with some of the bad decisions that they've made.
I wonder if almost like this might cause them to be resolute and say like we're not going to be taken down by this.
Yeah.
It means we're going to keep Gregg Berhalter.
Right, exactly. Like I
Which
think
would be, I mean, so U.S. Soccer.
But let me ask you guys this before you move on. Scandal aside, do you believe he should be retained?
I don't ask Mike that question.
right. Mike will say no.
Yes.
I'm just going to say it for him. He'll say no.
I will say no. I would say no just on the tactical side.
Right, that's
but
what
I
I'm
will
talking
say
about.
with the Gio Reyna incident, I think he made several missteps along the way, and you could paint this that Gregg Berhalter is a victim. He is a victim of something here,
Right.
but he is also a victim of his own design in that he took some inside talk, some locker room talk, and revealed it to reporters. Yes, it was off the record, but he took something that was about a player vote and all this and the disciplinary actions that he took against Gio Reyna. He took inside business and he let the world know,
Right.
and that stuff got reported on. So he's made several missteps that made Gio Reyna look worse.
And that's part of the job, by the way. Part of the job is if you mess that up, you are doing a bad job of being.
Gregg Berhalter showed with this Gio Reyna thing time and time again that he did not know how to manage the situation well.
Do you think that Gregg Berhalter played Gio when he shouldn't have because of what happened 31 years ago and him being worried about what Gio's parents knew or did not know?
No.
Doesn't that make him a worse coach?
I don't know what the tactics were in not playing Gio Reyna. Anybody that's a U.S. soccer fan wanted to see Gio Reyna. If the manager doesn't want to play Gio Reyna, that's well within his right. What I don't understand is telling Gio Reyna, one of your most talented players ever, that you're not going to use him before a World Cup, because then the player checks out and it got ugly, predictably.
Right, and I do think that, like, from a management standpoint, David, I don't know, like, it seems like managing expectations. I'm sure in the NBA you got to tell bench players that they're bench players at some point, and that's never a good conversation to have, and Gio Reyna did not handle it well as an 18-year-old who fancies himself one of the bigger talents in U.S. soccer. But I
he
think,
is, though, just to jump in. He,
Yeah, he is.
isn't he? Like, their second,
but
arguably their second best player?
No, but you can also make an argument that the players who were playing did their job, and that Reyna, on the evidence of the fact that he played 2 of the 14 qualifiers because he's injured all the time, that Timothy Weah and Christian Pulisic deserve to start in those positions.
At the heart of it was Gio's effort in training.
Correct. But I think everything that happened yesterday is because Gregg Berhalter went to a leadership conference and talked about what happened with Gio Reyna without ever mentioning Gio Reyna's name. It has since been said that that was meant to be an off-the-record leadership conference, but the owners of the leadership conference decided to put a whole piece together about what he said and included everything that Gregg Berhalter said, despite the fact that it was meant to be off the record. Those comments were the reason why, when printed by major media outlets and confirmed by The Athletic, were the reason why Daniel Reyna went to U.S. Soccer with, hey, I know shit about what Greg did when he was 18. And so, like, hey, like 18-year-old for 18-year-old.
Follow each other, though.
Right.
What you just said
No,
shouldn't be.
I completely agree. I think it's so far out of bounds to be like, hey, man, I know shit about you. Don't F with my kid. Like, I just think, like, in professional sports, you cannot do that. This is some youth soccer shit.
Yeah, it's
that we
small
saw
time.
play out on an international stage.
It's small time. It makes U.S. soccer look cheap and small. But I will say, I'm not defending the actions. From the Gio Reyna perspective and from the parents' perspective, Gio Reyna fessed up to his lack of effort. He apologized before in front of his teammates. There was a vote, allegedly. There's conflicting reports on whether or not this vote actually happened.
A vote to kick him off the team, essentially.
To kick him off the team. So he suffered embarrassment after embarrassment during the World Cup, none bigger than not playing as much as he had hoped. And so he thought that this was behind him. And then it got unearthed for all the world to dissect when Gregg Berhalter decided to open his mouth and talk about inside locker room business. And that's where the parents got offended and acted in a totally embarrassing way. At the very least embarrassing. That's me putting it kindly. So
this is what leadership is, though, right? Making tough decisions. And when you put something to a vote to your players, there is no expectation by the player who is the subject of the vote or the players making the votes that will stay private. You just can't have that expectation.
You mentioned that Gio Reyna should never play for the U.S. soccer team, and I couldn't disagree more. I think Gio Reyna, from all accounts right now, and there'll be more reporting done on this, is an innocent in all this. His biggest
Kids
offense.
are often innocent, but they have to pay the price.
He should not. He should not. He should not.
Release players because their parents were a pain in the ass.
But Samson,
have you released? Would you? Let me ask you something.
Not a great player.
If Miguel Cabrera,
one of our
Hanley
number one
Ramirez,
picks, our number one pitcher,
was he good?
Yes.
He was not a good pro.
He was going to be a good pro.
Was he a good pro? Did he turn out to be a good pro?
I mean, when you're by the way, we're just mincing words. When you're a minor league player, you're a professional.
Okay, but so Gio Reyna is a good professional. Gio Reyna
at the highest level.
Gio Reyna plays for Borussia Dortmund. Gio Reyna is very good for Borussia Dortmund. Gio Reyna is one of the best talents.
And again, he's 18 years old.
Yeah, he's one of the best talents we've ever put out. You're not closing the door on one of the greatest generational talents because his dad and mom wanted to be assholes one time.
Collateral damage. Right? You cannot have any parents out there thinking
there's
that
different
they
managers.
Can possibly. How are you going to get someone to coach?
How is Gio Reyna supposed to pay for something?
Could be blackmailed by parents?
But it was his parents. You're going to punish Gio Reyna at 18 years old for something his parents did when he's one of the most talented players?
People have to pay the price for the actions of others, isn't it?
Thoroughly dismissing this take.
Well, this is him doing organizational man talk where there's nothing more that needs to be protected than the rights of the organization to exert its power. David Samson's
not
almost
just to exert its power, but to succeed.
I thoroughly dismiss it.
Okay, so we can't talk about it.
His take does not. It's been dismissed.
It's been dismissed, and I should have respected the dismiss, but I kept it moving. And once he says it's been thoroughly dismissed, I have to back off. That's it. Once it's been vetted and thoroughly dismissed,
it was not vetted.
Thoroughly.
I disagree with you, David, just because Gio Reyna's good and I don't think he should take the fall. But I like where you're coming from, which is this cannot be allowed. You can't allow. We're talking about professional sports. Can you imagine in any other sporting context if mommy and daddy got involved?
It's crazy.
You can't allow that to happen.
Welcome to the world of college football recruiting, by the way.
Oh.
Different.
No, it's not.
And I don't think that's happening
pro.
anymore with NILs, by the way.
Huh?
Now it's just how much money.
What? It's happening way more now with NIL.
Now they can have their hand out in the open.
Thoroughly dismissed.
What happened to thoroughly dismissed? I thought it was over. Tell me what horse hockey is. I don't.
It's horse poop. That's the origins of hockey. They would go out into a frozen pond and pass around horse dung.
Yeah, that's what the puck was made out of. Yeah.
It's you put skates on a horse, give it a stick, and they play hockey. Obviously.
No,
2 minutes for rough
they
on
play
ice.
field hockey. Duh. You got them on ice.
No, not water polo, just regular polo on ice.
I said, what's the joke? It's like, do you play water polo? Yes, I drowned 3 ponies last year.
I thoroughly dismissed your Gio Reyna take, but you said Claudio Reyna should lose his job at Austin FC. I don't really think that there's precedent for this. I'm willing, certainly,
there is.
to hear that out.
What about Colangelo? Amin, can we talk about Colangelo?
Sure.
What did he not do something? And then it was his wife doing it, or he was doing it with burner accounts?
His wife had burner accounts, and
then what happened to him?
Well, I mean, the other thing about it was because also the team was underperforming. It was not doing as well, and that's why I wanted to get to the.
Isn't Austin FC and his actions as a parent for U.S. national? Don't they operate in different silos?
No, they don't. I mean, if he's guilty of trying to do this,
well, that's why his wife tried to take the heat.
Right, exactly. Which in the same way, which I guess this is the Colangelo.
Payne Manning's wife is an HGH addict.
Well,
corollary.
Keep in
Roger
mind,
Clemens' wife.
Claudio Reyna, decorated U.S. soccer player, was captain, has loads of executive experience, has been viewed as a leader and a best friend to Gregg Berhalter.
That's the weird part.
For 30 years.
That's the weird part that no one's talking about.
This is shocking to me that Claudio Reyna, one of the more stoic, central casting leadership figures would do something like this, allegedly.
Claudio Reyna is best friends with Gregg Berhalter, and then Danielle Reyna is best friends with Gregg Berhalter's wife, whose name escapes me. So the idea that, this goes back to what you're saying, David, is that you would go to U.S. Soccer rather than pick up the phone and call your best friend of 30 years, or have your husband call his best friend of 30 years and have a conversation about it. It's just bizarre.
So if I own Austin FC, no matter how good our team is, I can't have an employee, a rogue employee like that. It's too risky.
Because if you
I'll
do
find
it,
someone else.
If he do it to his best
only guy who
friend,
can be our sporting director.
if he could do it to his best friend, who else will he do it?
I get that logic.
That's the real one.
But is this just, I mean, is this that the greatest of the urges in every animal kingdom, according to Ron McGill, is parent protecting child? Like
Mama bear.
Yeah.
Like this.
And you can just put that on steroids when it's soccer involved for somehow. Soccer, for some reason, soccer parents are a cut above. And New Jersey soccer parents,
Have you
my
ever
God,
been to a
pal.
Little League game, Mike? In Florida?
What's odd to me is that this is a battle royale of the two families in U.S. soccer that have benefited from nepotism the most.
The
Greg
worst.
Berhalter got his job essentially because of the place that his brother was in, and
That's not true.
well, I mean, it's
Just
it's
not true.
It's not.
I'm sure he
You're
worked
thoroughly
hard.
dismissed, Mike.
It certainly
Mike
it
is
certainly
thoroughly
helped.
dismissed.
I'm sure he worked hard.
Yeah.
Whittingham,
for
put it on
U.S.
the
soccer,
poll, please. Put it on the poll. More dangerous, New Jersey soccer parents or evil?
But for U.S. soccer, all of this, I think, it shines a light on an operation that, as the U.S. women have been super successful on the pitch, as it seems as though U.S. soccer is making strides in this country, the operation itself seems very small time. And I think that this is...
Why are you saying that on the basis of a rogue parent?
because of how insular U.S. soccer is, because of the
This would be
Reyna-
a story in most countries, wouldn't it?
Oh, I mean,
if you want to talk
not
about
to look-
France, look, David Samson banned Gio Reyna from the national team. I will tell you that Karim Benzema blackmailed one of his teammates with a sex tape and came back to the national team.
So good.
although to be fair, it took him like 9 years to do so.
It did.
But he got there in the
and
end.
he got back.
And he was the best player in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, he won the Ballon. So he was really good. He's certainly a lot better than Gio Reyna, but there is precedent from someone coming back from something far, far worse. But this does, you can't make the argument that this doesn't seem small time. And it's not just this one incident. I think it's an indictment in that the Reynas feel like they could do this. I understand they're U.S. soccer royalty, but you're the Reynas. You're the Reynas. For the Reynas to feel like they have the stroke tells me that there is a culture problem within U.S. soccer. That they feel like they have the power to do this. Tells me that
I just
it
think
is
there's
a very
two people.
small time
There are two
operation.
people that were
Baseball.
pissed off.
Yeah, that doesn't make soccer small or the organization weak. It just makes the parents
I think that they're weak
psychotic.
because of some of the decisions that they've made, the overall culture, the fact that Gregg Berhalter is even in the running still. I think all of it seems small time when you compare it to some of the other powers in I'm not classifying the U.S. as a power, but I am in the women's game. But they seem married and okay to just moderate performance, just meeting expectations, where Portugal's manager gets sacked. Brazil's managers resign in shame when they make it to the knockout round. Here, we'll keep you around for as long as you want to be here.
But
It's just
Mike,
a weird
but that's-
culture.
it's-
This culture, by the way, this was co-signed
there,
when we
Mike.
had
We're
Ali and
getting
Ash. Ali and Ash co-signed on this. There is a weird culture of satisfaction and patting yourself on the back when you haven't really accomplished much in the men's game.
It's tough because I think about it from the perspective of like a crappy team. Think about it from an NBA team that just hasn't had any success. The Charlotte Hornets, right? They just
Sacramento Kings.
Well, even the Sacramento Kings have a long ago history of success as the Royals once upon a time. But if you think of, and even recently, in the modern era, they've made it to a conference finals. I was going through teams last night because I'm bored, and I said Charlotte and New Orleans are the only two teams in NBA history to not make it to the conference finals, right? So literally everything they do is cause for success. I used to get into this with people, I can't believe they hang division banners. Like, hell yeah, we don't have championships? We got to celebrate some amount of success as we build to what eventually we want to be a championship program. So I think while I agree with you that U.S. soccer is insular, and I agree with you that it is a small-time operation, I understand the need to celebrate, like, we made it to knockout round. Like, you guys might be disappointed, but from my perspective, I'm looking like, yeah, what did you guys think? You think you guys are one of the best teams in the world?
Whitty, you told me because of in disgust because of a rogue parent, and what I'll tell you is that where is the leadership? This feels like a rudderless ship right now. The fact that we're hearing about it, I think, is an indictment on U.S. soccer. They didn't snuff this out. They didn't keep this inside. This got out. This is petty. This is small.
Whitty,
who is a cult of personality that takes over this
Where do you
operation?
disagree with Mike Ryan, Whitty? Because Mike has been anti this program since before the World Cup started. He was against Berhalter. He would have fired him the day before the Cup started and put somebody else in there. Like, where is the source of your greatest disagreements about this?
The source of my greatest disagreement is, to Amin's point, I watched them at the World Cup, and I genuinely think that's as good as they can play. Like I really do. Like that is as good as they can play. And they were really good against England in that 0-0 draw. They were, I thought, really good against Iran for large stretches of that game. They were really good against Wales for large stretches of that game.
They scored 2 goals in this.
I know.
In these 3 games, they scored 2 goals.
I understand. I thought that is as well as they can play as the U.S. men's national team on this stage. I'm just saying, looking
remember
at
that celebrating mediocrity guarantees it.
There you go. That's been my problem with U.S. soccer.
Lads, we're not Brazil. We're not Brazil.
Lads, we're the U.S. We shouldn't be drawing. We shouldn't be drawing in Panama.
Mike,
we're the U.S.
Mike, do you think this collection of talent, not like could these players have been better or could we have better players? This collection of talent should have done better?
I think that they could have done better than 2 goals from open play in the group stage. Yeah, I'm not satisfied with that. I'm not satisfied with that at all. And I think part of the reason is because Gio Reyna wasn't playing either. I think that they probably would have scored more.
I
we
did dismiss your take, Mike, because you have no way of saying that. You have no basis of saying they could have been better. Everybody who doesn't win, you can say they could have been better.
Yes. Everyone can say they could have been better. But yeah, like from the overall, right?
Dude,
like,
hold on. Did you not hear Louis Van Gaal after that Netherlands game? He systematically, tactically tore Gregg Berhalter apart and pranced around and paraded that he did so. We're talking, did you see the marking in that Netherlands game? This was basic defending. Get out of here with that. I'm not going to have you tell me that was as good as they could play.
Dismissed.
There was play. That is pickup soccer, fundamental stuff. And the other manager
the individual players who did not cover their men made mistakes.
You get a manager that has the individuals cover their mistakes.
They're not good enough.
No, they're not. The manager's not good enough either.
If it's basic defense, they should know. Like that shouldn't have to even be taught if it's that basic.
Did you watch?
Did you know Bernie Madoff's son committed suicide?
Did you know that David Buster from Dave and Buster committed suicide?
Just happened.
That's insane. It blew my mind.
He was sick.
How did we get here?
What just happened?
How did we get here?
We're trying to move on from the lad comments.
Hold on.
And I'm thoroughly dismissing Mike continuing.
Hold on. Let's stop down. Did you know that the guy from Dave and Buster's committed suicide? That was, it was shocking.
What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
He's changing the subject, Dan, because we've been in a soccer rut.
We are stuck for 30 minutes in the soccer stuff.
I hear lad, that's it. I'm thoroughly dismissing and moving on because I want to get to the movie review because I think it'll be an interesting discussion.
Hold on. This is a problem. This is one of the more scandalous stories about U.S. soccer, and there have been loads of them over the years. This is the men's national team on the heels of a World Cup, and we're classifying a 20-minute discussion on it as a rut. You're the problem. You're the problem. This is not a rut. This is not a diatribe. This is us focusing on one of the biggest sports in America
it's
at the highest levels. This is not something that we should apologize for.
It's 30 minutes.
We shouldn't apologize for it.
Lads is where it escalated to a place where I just feel like everyone needs to calm down.
I mean, we're not Brazil.
That's why I asked whether Bernie Madoff's son committed suicide.
That's why I brought up David Buster.
Sometimes the kids pay the price for the action of the parents.
I mean, really?
Wow. Cut that. Hold on.
If you want to use it.
I feel like mine was not as bad in retrospect now. Oh my God.
Once again, famously childhood trauma, etc. Was your celebrating mediocrity ensures it point about U.S. soccer or the Dan Le Batard Show?
Wow.
Oh, it's just about everything, actually. That applies to every single thing you do in life, on or off the court.
The Miami Heat were hanging division titles since '95, right? Like they were celebrating something because they didn't have a history of success until they started having success. I don't think celebrating meaning milestones is the same as resting on the laurels of them. And so I know it sounds like, yeah, we're tough. We don't, like the Lakers, we only retire the jerseys of Hall of Famers. All right, that's cool for you. And when you have a story to a franchise as the Lakers do, that makes sense.
The fundamental disagreement that I have with Whitty on that World Cup was fine is I see 3.5 years from now the U.S. is hosting a World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
I want the expectations, not, hey, let's get to the knockout round and see if we can be frisky. I want them to be, let's go as far as we possibly can.
What do you
let's
think
try
that
to
is?
win this.
What do you
That's
think?
the exact same thing. You just said a tautology.
No. I want the expectation to be semifinals, not knockout stages.
Fine, that's the expectation. Can we move on now?
Yeah. But that's
Okay.
a fundamental
the
disagreement. The
expectation is for the World Cup in 2026, which is 3 years from now, that the United States team, whoever's playing on it or coaching it, is that they make it to the semifinals.
I just don't think U.S. soccer is capable of that line of thinking. I want to ask you about how the NFL handled all of this with Damar Hamlin, because, a lot of people have been critical, and I think I'm going to go on the other way. I think that the NFL has handled this pretty well in the face of something that's pretty unprecedented. I'm sure they've run through hypotheticals, but they called the game. They had the players and coaches involved in the decision. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, by the way. They're all kind of learning this. They didn't reschedule the game. We still don't know the status of what's going to happen with that game. By the way, reports are that Damar Hamlin's father spoke to the team and told the team that Damar is making progress. So there is some good news on the Damar Hamlin front. Apparently, it was very well received by the team. They said they, quote, needed it. But how do you think that the NFL has handled this situation?
I think they were ready for the most part. The only thing that I could quibble with is you don't need an hour to postpone the game. That is when you're going through your protocols. You have a list of what you will postpone a game for. If an umpire gets hurt, the game continues. If an umpire drops dead or is unconscious and goes to the hospital, you're going to not play that game. And it's the same with players. But if someone in the stands has cardiac arrest, we continue to play. Even if someone in the stands would die, the game is going to continue. But if someone on the field does, then the game gets postponed. So I assume the NFL knew immediately. They were just getting to ESPN to make sure they understood that they were losing a game, losing the hours. They wanted to get to the stakeholders before they announced it. But I think they could have announced it to the fans and their network earlier.
To David's point, Stephon Marbury's dad passed away in the middle of a game, and they didn't tell him until after the game. So like they kept playing.
Was he at the game?
He was playing in the game.
No. Was his dad at the game?
Yes, his dad was at the game.
There you go.
Wasn't there a scenario where somebody lost someone and the internet found out? So it's like the player didn't know. I don't remember if it was that story. I'm trying to think back. There was some story where there was a game being played where the internet knew that somebody had a tragedy. I got to look it up.
Yeah.
Probably
He was a
should have
baseball
done that
Yeah,
before
before you
talking into the microphone, I think.
I did see some
Mediocrity.
hypothesizing that they waited to call the game so that there wouldn't be a rush of fans leaving as like the emergency personnel was leaving. They wanted to make sure that it was like not a traffic jam outside, stuff like that, which I could see. But I agree that I think like in that scenario, you probably do need to call the NFLPA reps. You need to get all of those people on the phone, agree, like, are the players still going to get paid for this game? Are we going to try to announce that we're rescheduling it before we announce that it's postponed? And then I guess they decided we'll figure that out later. Let's just announce it's postponed.
Additionally, you're also still trying to gather information on how Damar Hamlin is doing because it could help inform your decision there. So I think inside of 55
There's
minutes,
no
that's
scenario
actually
they
pretty.
would have kept playing. Actually, even if he had magically woken up in the ambulance, they're not restarting.
No,
that game.
I understand, but I think all that stuff that we've outlined, that Jess outlined, all that takes time. Being able to explain to ESPN what the plan is, That takes time. And for someone on Twitter to be like, how are they still on the field trying to figure this out? There's so many more moving parts.
Samson can speak to the particulars, right? And the moving parts are so much less important than what you're dealing with at the time. You'll take whatever the hit is of people are going to be angry and say you didn't handle it right, because there's no right way to handle that. You can just do the best you can with it. Like, there's no right way to handle that. Like, there are all sorts of logistics involved. You've got a league partner, and you don't want to make money the thing you're haggling about, or people getting paid the thing you're haggling about when they're crying on the field because someone's being sent to the hospital because oxygen's not getting to their brain.
Someone has to do that, Dan. Like, not everyone can have the reaction of crying on the field. Someone has to be the robot.
Agreed,
Someone has to
but
Skip Bayless.
But it doesn't take 15 minutes is the point. Like,
right,
somebody
it takes a little longer. And you mentioned that there's no right way to do it. I would say that, well, we all know that there's a wrong way to do it. So if there's a wrong way to do it, then there has to be a right way.
I think almost all the ways are going to look and sound and feel wrong when everyone is agitated and wants an explanation on who do I blame here, because I'm really unreasonably bothered by this, even though it's something that's happening on television and not in my personal life.
I guess in hindsight, if they had immediately called it as I was watching it just as a fan, I think that would have caused a lot of panic. I think I would have been like pretty freaked out if that happened. Having like a few minutes to sit there and process what I was actually watching did help me like figure out my own emotional response to it. But again, that's different than if you're an executive or a player or someone else.
But David needs to leap
involved with it.
David needs to leap into action there, correct?
But I think part of leaping
someone
into
has to,
action, part of leaping into action, sorry, David, is just anticipating the reaction from all of the audience also as well, right? You take that into account.
But no, that's not even a consideration in your protocol, in your emergency plan. And we have it all written down, what to do. We have the route to the hospital the ambulance takes to get to Jackson, right? There's just everything is written down. The first responders know how they're accessing the field. You rehearse it. You actually rehearse this stuff in order so that it's repetition helps breed familiarity. But no, the audience is never, their emotions of an issue are not taken into account, except for one thing. We will plan in advance what we're willing to show on the Jumbotron as a replay. Right? So there will be a pecking order of injuries that we'll show, and then there's an order of hierarchy of who makes the decision. Hey, we'll show that broken leg again, or we'll show that hit again. That's also planned in advance.
ESPN caught a lot of stick for the Christian Eriksen thing, and not a lot of people knew that there was a world feed and that they weren't really in charge with what was shown with the replays. I thought ESPN kind of navigated that much better. Despite some unfair criticism for last year. We're wrapping up our time with you here, David. David joins us every week again. Check out Nothing Personal with David Samson. Follow him on Twitter at David P. Samson every week. He gives us a movie or television series review. What is your review for this week?
Well, I wanted to spend time on the Madoff miniseries, which came out yesterday, because it's such an unbelievable thing. I don't know how much time we have left, and I don't want to necessarily blow the wad on this. However, if you've got 4 hours of time, watch the Madoff miniseries, because if you don't realize the impact that his Ponzi scheme had on your life today, on the financial markets today, on the actual lives of his children and his siblings, and the thousands of people who lost their life savings, the thousands of charities who were made bankrupt by Bernie Madoff, the implication for me as someone who's Jewish on the embarrassment of having someone who's Jewish being looked at this way and having it trickle down to how people may view me. The whole situation is a nightmare to behold. And if you're not aware of it, check out this documentary. It's very well done, very informative, and will give you ample opportunity to think about power and about decisions you make, and about it even goes, in my mind, to cryptocurrency today, right? And, people in their desire to get rich quickly, and the fact that they'll turn their back. And then there's a baseball side to it, which is the Wilpons, who owned the Mets. They were invested in Madoff, and they lost money with Bernie Madoff. They signed Bobby Bonilla to his contract because of Bernie Madoff. They were making more money for Madoff than they were paying to Bonilla. So it was a great deal to sign Bonilla to that deal that we talk about every year on Bobby Bonilla Day. But that Bobby Bonilla Day is only because of Bernie Madoff.
Whittingham, put it on the poll, please. Do you not want to blow the wad on this? Amin wanted to talk about the Charlie Chaplin documentary. I don't know if you have seen it, Samson, because Amin is strongly recommending the Charlie Chaplin Showtime documentary to everybody.
You should have texted that before you said it into the microphone. No, I have not seen it, but I'll put it on my list and I'll watch it. How about this? We'll do it for next week.
I wasn't actually interested in your commentary on it. I was giving Amin the opening to talk about it.
All right. I'll wait.
Okay, great.
See you, Gary.